Hello everyone, today we're going to be doing the Theologia Moralis by St. Alphonsus Liguori, Book 1, Treatise on Conscience, Chapter 2, on a doubtful conscience. This is the order of the chapter. If you're interested, pause the video now and look through. Also, Alphonsus in the text references a dissertation on conscience and probable opinion, which will come up eventually in the text. This is something that I'll be doing in a few weeks because it essentially takes the place of Chapter 4. So I'm going to do Chapter 3, then I'll get to the dissertation which he speaks of. Okay, what is a doubtful conscience? What is a positive or negative doubt? A conscience which suspends assent for each part of the doubt and remains doubtful and hesitant. That's just a conscience which isn't sure about the truth of one or other law which it is supposed to be assenting to. Now there are there are four kinds of doubt, but there are two kinds considered here. One is negative, one is positive. With a negative doubt, you have no reason to choose either opinion. Is it better for me to eat red or yellow M&Ms? I don't know. I don't know of any reasons for choosing one or the other. And then positive would be good reasons to choose both opinions. And then he talks about speculative and practical kinds of doubt, which we'll cover in a second, which is here. What is a speculative and practical doubt? Speculative, when someone has a doubt about the truth of a matter. This has to do with a more abstract matter, usually with a matter of like moral science. So whether some war is truly just or truly unjust. And then there's the practical doubt, which is when there is uncertainty about the integrity of the matter. This is interested in lawfulness and application, whether it is lawful for me to fight in this war, whether I should be abstaining from this action, whether I should paint on Sunday. It is never lawful to act with a practically doubtful conscience. He who loves danger shall perish. Ecclesiastes 3:27. If you suspect you're committing a mortal sin, then you sin to the degree that you expect that you're sinning. So this is a case where you have a couple options. One of them you think is possibly sinful. The other options aren't necessarily sinful, but you choose the sinful option or the possibly sinful option. You're putting yourself in an occasion for sin unnecessarily. Now, you could be in a case where you have doubts about every option. This would be a case of confused conscience, so you would not be committing a sin by choosing one or the other options. But if this is not a case of confused conscience, and only one of the options is doubtfully sinful, then you must avoid the doubtfully sinful act. In a matter where someone knows something is evil but doubts whether it is grave or light. This is just, is this action I'm going to take a mortal sin or a venial sin? Well, if the object of the sin is mortal, then the sin is mortal. If the object is the venial, and the man does not notice an obligation to settle the truth of the matter, and he is honest, he has a fearful conscience, then it'll be venial. But otherwise it'll be mortal. This is all according to Alphonsus, of course. So what he's saying here is just, except in cases where the actual action is venial, like, say, wearing a certain piece of clothing out of vanity, where the object is venial, and you don't notice an obligation to decide or to learn whether it is venial or mortal. So I look so good in it. You're vain about wearing your shirt, and then you don't notice an obligation, and you genuinely would change your mode of dress if you knew otherwise, then it is only venial. But otherwise, it's mortal, because you're assenting to something that you think very well could be a mortal sin. Okay, what should one do who is practically doubtful? Well, This is, again, for someone who isn't sure about an action they're going to take. First, you should suspend all of your actions if you can. Examine all the principles relevant to the situation that are known to you. Think about it for a while. If that's insufficient, if you can't come to a certain conclusion, seek advice of a confessor, parish priest, or other trusted advisor. After either or both of these is done, the person should have some level of certainty, or at least probability, on the truth or licitness of one course of action. If they happen to be wrong, they do not sin in this circumstance, for they made an honest attempt at overcoming their error. So this is just to say that you should try to figure it out yourself. If you can't do that, ask for advice. Do your due diligence, and if you fail in that, then you haven't sinned by taking the action because you genuinely tried to learn the truth. Whether it is lawful to act with a speculatively doubtful conscience. As long as the actor is morally certain of the licitness of his action on the grounds of reflexive principles, he judges practically that an action is certainly morally good. We'll talk about reflexive moral principles in a second, but this is just to say that if you have a principle which keeps you from needing to assent to a certain law, then you are not obliged to follow that law. And now we'll talk about that. On the many reflexive principles from which a practically certain conscience can be formed. Principle number 1. A doubtful law cannot induce a certain obligation. If you're uncertain of the truth of a certain law, it cannot oblige you. You're not bound to laws that you are not certain of. And second, the condition of the possessor is better. This is something that is incorporated in actual law, not just like moral law. This has to do with who has the burden of proof in the circumstance. So, in normal actions, where you just have a doubt, you're about a law, you're free to disobey the doubtful law, because libertas possidet. Now, this means that liberty has possession. Liberty has possession, or your freedom has possession. There are two principles here: lex possidet versus libertas possidet. Lex possidet means law has possession, so you have to assume that the law applies. But if libertas possidet, if freedom has possession, then you have to assume that freedom freedom of action is available for you. In cases of insufficient promulgation of a law, which creates a doubtful conscience, the person is free to choose, because libertas possidet. In cases where there was certainty at one time, but a doubt arose afterward, such as cases where the validity of a marriage is questioned, the presumption is that it was done lawfully until it is proved otherwise. But that's a very small subset of actions. Undoubtful law, or one doubtfully promulgated, and on a certain law doubtfully abrogated. Doubtfully made or doubtfully promulgated laws do not oblige on account of the first reflexive principle, because libertas possidet. If a law was made certain or promulgated, and it is unsure whether it has been abrogated, then the presumption is in favor of the law. In this case, lex possidet. The law has possession. On uttering a doubtful vow, and on a certain vow, as well as fulfilling a doubtful vow. A vow is a particular law a man imposes on himself. Uncertainty about whether the vow was made allows for freedom. Uncertainty about the exact parameters also allows for freedom. Certainty about a vow obliges. What about someone who judges that he properly fulfilled a vow? Uncertainty about the fulfillment of a vow, of a certain vow, obliges until certainty is obtained, provided that no scrupulosity is involved. The reason I added the bit about scrupulosity is because you could be continually uncertain as a result of being scrupulous, which would not be an actual doubt. That would be the result of a psychological problem the person has. What if someone already fulfilled the burden of the vow but does not remember it? So this is a case where a person makes a promise, they fulfill the promise, but they don't fulfill it because they remembered that it was a promise. They fulfill it for some other reason. So the question is, are they obligated to fulfill the promise again, but this time with knowledge that they're doing it as a result of the vow and intentionally doing it as a result of the vow? And Alphonsus says that you are not held to do this because you've already fulfilled your vow. The subject is held to obey a superior in a matter which is doubtfully bad. The presumption will be in favor of the superior, except in cases of danger to the body or soul, to be clarified at a later chapter. This is just to say that if you're in doubt about which opinion is correct, and a superior, such as a priest or a bishop, or anyone with authority over you, maybe a parental figure like your father or mother, tells you to choose one opinion rather than the other, then you're held to follow the opinion of your superior, except in cases where you're in danger as a result of their decision. Doubts about different matters. Uncertainty about fasting at the ages of 21 and 60. If you're uncertain about whether you're 21 years of age, are you held to fast? Well, Alphonsus says you aren't. If you're in doubt about whether you have reached 60, are you still held to fast? Well, Alphonsus says that you are held to continue fasting until you're certain that you're older than 60. Now, these laws are not currently in place, but this is about the age of adulthood. I believe it's done country by country now. So in America, 18 would be the age that a person would be held to fast, but I believe 60 would still be the age that they are not held to fast anymore on Fridays or before Mass. Or, no, just on Fridays, sorry. Uncertainty about the age to receive holy orders. The presumption is in favor of the law, lex possidet. So until you're certain that you're old enough, you're not obliged to, or you are obliged to abstain from entering holy orders without approbation. And then fasting at midnight, because if you're uncertain about whether you ate before or after midnight, then you are not obliged to abstain from communion because you need to prove that you ate after midnight. Now, the fasting at midnight thing doesn't apply under the current canons of the Church because people are only held to fast 1 hour before receiving nowadays. But it used to be that you had to fast from midnight all the way until after Mass. What about doubt on the validity of matrimony? This just has to do with the marital debt or, having sex with your partner. A doubting person cannot claim the marital debt for they're uncertain about whether the marriage is valid, but the certain one can claim the marital debt in good conscience for opposite reasons. What about a doubt on the payment if the doubt is certain? A man certain of debt and uncertain of payment is held to pay. A debtor certain of debt but uncertain of payment may either demand the payment in proportion to his doubt or the full payment. What about a doubt on what is owed if someone possesses something in good faith? This is a situation where there's equal reason to think that something is owned by one person as by another. The possessor may keep the object until it is proven one way or the other, though the possessor may not sell, consume, or break the object until after an investigation has been carried out, because the object may be owed to the other person. What if probable reason urges against the possessor and he has nothing in his favor? This is a situation where there's only really probable reason to think that the other person owns the object. Alphonsus says that presumption is actually still in favor of the possessor by rights of the possession itself, despite probable arguments. Now, if a certain argument is brought and it's proved that the other person owns the object, then he has to give it to them. But if only probable arguments are brought, then the person may continue as they are. What if the possessor, when a doubt arises, should have failed to find the truth? The possessor is held to return ownership, either in part or in whole, in proportion to his own doubt, until an investigation is finished. Whether one can receive the Eucharist who is uncertain if he swallowed any food or drink. Well, is presumption in favor of the law? Well, doubt cannot oblige, so the answer is no. Is it irreverent to consume the Eucharist in this case? Well, this is actually considered a reverent use of freedom by Alphonsus because, as we know, doubt cannot oblige. So the person cannot be forced to not receive as a result. What about if the person eats before or after midnight? Well, if you're in doubt, the doubt still does not oblige. Simple as. Now, in the modern context, this would be applied not to midnight, but rather to the hour before receiving communion. But the same idea still applies. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.